Well, hello and welcome to our Securing Cloud Voice Communications webinar. My name is Lance McCall, the Global Campaign Manager here at Ribbon Communications, and I appreciate you joining us today here on Bright Talk. Today we're joined by Jeff Bolger, Systems Engineering Consultant for Ribbon, as well as Christopher Reddy, Ribbon's Senior Systems Engineer Specialist. We also have Paul Kratz, Ribbon Sales Engineer, standing by to help with Q&A and some other things. So thanks to all of them for being on with us today. I wanted to point out the Ask a Question section, which is just below the slides that you're seeing. I just scroll down a little bit to see that section. Truly do please ask us any questions you have today. That's why we're here. We love hearing from you throughout the webinar. So please just respond to any prompts you may see and just ask us any questions that come to mind. We'll circle back at the end of the webinar today and cover those questions. And you can ask the experts on the call today those questions and hear from them. That's really all I have. Just again, check that notifications area for some things I might put in there, a link to a white paper, just to name one. But I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to Jeff, who's going to get us started. Jeff.
Thank you, Lance. Appreciate it. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for taking time out of your day to be with us here and to talk about voice communications and what Ribbon can do to help you out with delivering your voice communications to your end customers. And just to echo what Lance was saying, please do ask questions. We like to have feedback. We like to have questions and make it interactive. Usually these webinars have a large variety of customers, and hopefully the majority of the people on are Ribbon customers already. But because in the voice market, we know that there's a lot of change, and we'll talk about that a little bit. And we know there's a lot of non-traditional players in the space. I thought I would take a minute to talk about Ribbon and the heritage of Ribbon, in case you're not familiar. Ribbon was created by the merger of Genband and Sonus Networks back in 2017, but both of those companies had acquisitions previously and brought different products to the portfolio. So Genband, obviously, with media gateways, and Nortel Networks with its various network modernization products, network transformation products, things like soft switches and application servers. And then with Sonus Networks, they brought in their portfolio of session border controllers. And then Ribbon over the years has actually done acquisitions separately. The one that we're going to focus on today is the products came from an acquisition in 2018 of a company called Edgewater Networks. And Edgewater brought in EdgeMark, which is the product that we really use and utilize quite a bit for securing the edge of a service provider's network. So therefore, edge SBCs, we sometimes call them. But as you can see, there have been other acquisitions as well, most notably and most recently in 2020 with ECI Networks, which actually brought to Ribbon a whole portfolio of IP routing and switching products and optical transport products, especially DWDM and middle mile type products. So Ribbon has a very rich history and a very rich heritage of different products and a very wide portfolio as the result. So what that allows us to do is respond to changing times in the industry. And as most of you are probably familiar, voice has really changed over the last, probably 10 years, but certainly it's accelerated over the last 4 or 5. And the way voice is offered to end customers has changed dramatically. So specifically voice over IP, obviously as compared to traditional TDM copper lines, to a residence or a business. But more than that, voice has really become more of a commodity, if you will. Broadband is really the lead offer that most service providers are pushing. Now, that doesn't mean that voice is going away. Obviously, everybody knows that's not the case because we have lots and lots of cell phones and businesses still use voice. And, there's still folks that have phones at their home. So it's certainly not going away, but what is growing and what is actually expanding in usage is broadband. And as a result, we've got a lot of non-traditional providers in the market that are emerging, not only to do things like voice, but also broadband and other services that most service providers offer. So as a result, and everybody knows there's lots and lots of government money out there with various programs at the federal and state levels. And as a result, there's lots of different models available for funding expansion of your network. And a lot of those require that voice be offered to the end customer. So it doesn't necessarily mean you're selling it, but to utilize a lot of these grants and to be able to take advantage of some of the settlement models, you have to be able to support voice. So ultimately, service providers want more flexibility as a result. And what that means is you want the ability to offer services quickly and be able to deploy the latest technology so you can be competitive and retain the least cost. But then more than likely, you're going to want to do that in an environment where you're software based, either with virtualization or cloud native type architectures. But generally, what we see is service providers wanting to move away from a purpose built hardware type environment where you have to worry about component obsolescence and hardware obsolescence, and more towards virtualized software applications that can reside on off the shelf servers or even in a public cloud. So there's also a need for service providers to retain control. And basically, what that means is to your end customers, you may be the cloud. The cloud is, a very nebulous term, and it can mean a lot of things to a lot of different people. But especially if you are offering voice services to an end customer, you may be hosting those services off of your network, in which case, a lot of times that's referred to as a private cloud, or you may be offering services that are hosted in a public cloud, somebody like AWS or Azure, one of those providers, or you may be reselling from a third party who offers hosted services and delivers those hosted services over some sort of a network. It could be the internet, it could be a managed network of some type, but there's lots of different ways for service providers to get that type of voice service to the end provider or the end customer. But the first provider who has their name on the bill that gets sent is typically who they see as the cloud. So that's kind of the reality of going forward, but there's still this very much focus on traditional customer values, things like survivability. What happens if I lose connectivity to that cloud? What happens? Can I still make calls to the PSAP? Can I still call locally? I want reliable service. I want service that can be supported in a business continuity type situation. I want to make sure my network is secure and I'm protected from hackers and different types of denial of service attacks, for example. All of those things are still very much in play and things that need to be talked about and considered as you look to sell and deliver voice services to your end customers. So Ribbon, over time, has essentially taken that theme, if you will, and done things like session border controllers to help secure the network, virtualizing to help deliver better performance and reduce footprints. All of those things are really added together to deliver to our customers, reduce costs, improve security, and the ability to move more quickly, and then potentially to be able to take some of these services and products and maybe increase revenue. So that's something that's not talked about a lot, but obviously with voice services and being able to do some things that Chris will talk about, the ability to generate revenue is something that potentially is overlooked. So those are obviously things that need to be considered when you're talking about voice. And one thing I'm going to do here, I'm going to deviate a little bit here and just kind of put in a plug real quick for the next Voice Solutions webinar that we're going to have. You may want to mark your calendars for August 7th at 11 a.m. Eastern. We will have a discussion at that point of voice solutions that are really geared towards the regional market space, whether it's traditional independents or some of the non-traditional providers that are offering voice. We're putting together a session to talk about voice solutions and what Ribbon can offer and things to be considered. So please mark your calendars for that. We haven't sent out invites yet, but you will want to check your inbox over the next couple weeks for an invite. So we hope you'll all be able to make that. So when we talk about these alternate ways that I mentioned, voice over IP and alternate networks to deliver voice, and the things that those things require, it's really important to think about things like that are listed here. Like, there's a whole lot more competition out there today, and you have non-traditional folks you're competing against. Literally, the electric company may be providing service in competition with the phone company, or there may be a wireless provider that's doing the same thing and offering voice, obviously. So, it's more than just an ILEC or a CLEC even. You have to think about being competitive in the products that you're offering. And you also have to consider the technology. So, for example, when we're offering service over voice over IP, you may have somebody that's registering with your call controller using a best effort transport network like the internet. So that becomes important, as well as the customer's network. Nowadays, you're actually talking to typically a customer's WAN or a customer's LAN with various types of phones and other devices that are sitting on that LAN. So that end customer network and understanding what it's doing and what's on that network make it really, really important to understand what the issues are, being able to see inside that network all the way to the desktop if possible to be able to troubleshoot. And ultimately, you have to think about things like security and call quality, SLA assurance, as well as survivability for cases where connectivity to that transport network is lost. Those are things that are extremely important to think about. So one of the things Ribbon has done is we've actually utilized some of our products, specifically the EdgeMark portfolio, and we've positioned them for use at the edge of the network. And specifically what we mean by that is a demarcation point, which is where the name EdgeMark comes from, and positioning those products at the end of your network, typically at a customer's premise, be it a small, medium business, an enterprise of some type, a hospital, a car dealership, a school, lots of different applications that most customers have. Most service providers have those types of customers deployed today. So with the EdgeMark, it gives you the ability to do that survivability in case connectivity is lost to the world. It gives you the ability to do analog interfaces of some type, to be able to configure services, do things like zero-touch provisioning for the endpoints that are hosted on the EdgeMark and on that LAN. But then more powerfully, taking all of those EdgeMarks that are deployed and rolling them up into a centralized application, we call it EdgeView, that allows you to do things like provisioning and management of those devices from a centralized architecture, and give you the ability to monitor and alert when there's service issues or degradation of service or loss of connectivity, those sorts of things. And then the ability to troubleshoot and remediate any kind of issues that are found. And then ultimately, and probably most passively, the ability to analyze quality, analyze utilization, and then report. So, those things kind of seem like mundane things in some respects, but when you have a large group of end customers and a large amount of these EdgeMark devices using untrusted networks, potentially best effort networks, potentially the ability to stay proactive and to centrally manage these devices is really important. So, and Chris will get into this in a bunch more detail. So, just to kind of level set here too, before we go off and talk about the edge marks, I wanted to kind of give you a level set of where these fit into the Ribbon portfolio. So, as you guys probably know, Ribbon has a large portfolio of session border controllers that span the width of service providers. Everything from the edge that we'll talk about here with EdgeMark that typically can sit in a service provider's edge in a customer's location, typically, or a residence. We have a line of enterprise products, enterprise session border controllers, both virtualized and hardware-based, and those can typically be done for more traditional session border control capabilities. And then we have another set of what we call core session border controllers that are really designed for central office or a data center type application and that can scale up to really large quantities of sessions. And again, we have virtualized versions and versions that are based on hardware. And those can be deployed in a wide variety of uses, a wide variety of places, like, for example, public clouds, private clouds, and they can do all sorts of capabilities, as well as dealing with things like Teams Direct Routing and Zoom and some of those third-party services that you guys may run into today. So that's kind of where the EdgeMark products fit in the portfolio. So now I'm going to turn it over to Chris, and we're going to dive a little bit deeper into the EdgeMark products and a program called Cloud to Edge that we think is really exciting and will really help make the deployment of EdgeMark and EdgeView something that should be hopefully pretty attractive, especially for customers that don't have their own staff and want to be able to offer voice services to their end customers and be able to do a lot of this proactive management. So, Chris, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Jeff. Good morning, everyone. Let's jump right in with the first step. Because of our experiences at DMARC with services at the edge of the network, we have learned quite a bit over the years. The features and functionality of the EdgeMark product line are constantly being improved as new services and bandwidth requirements are driving them. Our focus has always been voice services first, coupled with the support of data traffic second. This has led to a blend of features that support over 500,000+ deployments across multiple market segments. Additionally, we also maintain the necessary product interoperability and certifications for both Teams and Zoom platforms to enable continued growth at the edge. Let's take a look at the overall problem. There are multiple pain points that will be touched on in today's webinar. They all roll up into customer satisfaction and enabling long-term commitments. Customer churn reduction is a key factor in profitability. Improving revenues by providing more services and functionality without ripping and replacing equipment is also a key point. Then there's the human factor. The solution needs to be able to stand on its own from an ease of use perspective. The solution must also be easily adopted by the organization in short order and incorporated into the current processes. Turning up new customers generates revenue. Sitting in a classroom does not. Finally, the entire solution needs to be managed securely from desktop to data center. Legacy voice, as you know, is inherently different by comparison. Here are a few of the common items that are constantly being addressed. Packet-based networks are best effort. They've gotten significantly better since the inception of voice over IP, but they are still an imperfect delivery mechanism. Bandwidth constraints and latency negatively affects the overall voice solution. The end customer network is the ultimate unknown. It is hard to mitigate the unknown prior to establishing a service. Truck rolls are expensive. We should not have to be required to turn anything up, to initiate a second truck roll past the initial turn up. Managing customer churn is a priority for every organization. Long-term contracts and successful service delivery is key to maintaining low rate churn. Add in a host of other potential items that could affect the overall solution on a regular basis, and a good day is a challenge that Ribbon is willing to accept. To help mitigate these issues, I'd like to introduce the Cloud to Edge program. Cloud to Edge program bundles all the necessary software licensing into a monthly subscription, enabling growth at the edge of the network without additional cost. At the same time, ensuring consistent support capabilities through the management portal and access to Ribbon Technical Assistance Center 24/7. So what is the Cloud to Edge program? It was designed specifically to enable small and emerging service provider a level playing field in a growing market segment. Cloud to Edge reduces the costs associated with the voice network deployment, while at the same time minimizes the growth barriers associated with maintaining a network, such as licensing, technical resources, maintenance renewals, and customer support, etc. The Cloud to Edge program maximizes the ability to monetize the voice service by separating the cost of the operation, by separating the hardware cost from the operational cost. The hardware can be sold outright to the end customer or leased, creating a profit center. The recurring costs associated with a customer site, such as call licensing, maintenance, support, and management, are billed on a monthly basis via subscription. There are zero startup costs and predictable recurring costs as the business grows. The Edgemark product line is securely managed and provides desktop to data center support capabilities. Once the unit is turned up, no further truck rolls are required to manage the unit or support the end customer. The management platform provides the diagnostic tools needed to support the end customer after each turn-up. Combined, the Cloud to Edge program enables the partner to focus on growing the business. The Cloud to Edge program consists of two primary components, the hardware and management. The hardware component consists of the entire portfolio of Edgemark Edge SBCs, ranging from the simple analog telephone adapter to the feature-rich models supporting virtually every telecom interface available at the customer premise. The management component consists of the EdgeView platform. It provides the basis to deploy and turn up services with minimal effort, while at the same time enabling end customer support tools to ensure long-term business relationships. We have future-proofed our management capabilities with the development of Ribbon Application Management Platform, better known as RAM. Starting in Q4 of 2024, RAM will provide a single pane of glass that will extend beyond the Edgemark products into other Ribbon products, offering a greater support capabilities. The mean time to innocence, whether providing an over-the-top or all-encompassing service solution, the onus is always on the VoIP service provider to provide or to prove otherwise the quality of the call when the call goes south. The mean time to innocence clock begins ticking immediately to resolve the issue and avoid any finger pointing. Without the necessary tools to support the customer, things can begin to go sideways fast. The end game is to avoid any truck rolls or extended delays in restoring service to the end customer. This is where our years of experience come into play and are parlayed into the overall solution. The management platform used to deploy the Edgemark products is more than capable of troubleshooting the Edgemark remotely. This enables a significant reduction in the mean time to innocence number and equates to customer satisfaction and retention. So what does that mean time to innocence really prove? That the underlying issue is not being generated by the associated voice service. You will be able to determine whether the issue was on the LAN side, the customer network, or the WAN side, internet, so the customer resources can be directed to the appropriate resolution. Key to Cloud to Edge partner success. As previously mentioned, the Cloud to Edge program is a bundled solution that includes all the necessary components to deploy and maintain the end customer. The Edgemark hardware associated with the program is provided with dedicated SKUs only available to the Cloud to Edge partner. This level of price protection enables the ability and ensures the ability of the partner to monetize the hardware to the end customer while at the same time alleviating inventory issues related to licensing. All cloud-to-edge units include maximum licensing, so growth does not become an additional expense. The monthly cloud-to-edge subscription covers the three other core components of the program: support, maintenance, and management. The partner will have access to the hosted Ribbon management servers as part of the program. Once logged into the portal, the partner will be able to begin taking advantage of the program, while at the same time, each cloud-to-edge mark remains covered with maintenance, and the partner is able to access Ribbon technical support 24/7. The cloud-to-edge program effectively removes all the startup issues and costs related to deploying and maintaining a hosted voice service. So how does the secure management work? It provides a secure environment to support the end customer. Our years of experience at the edge of the network have paid off. It is also one of the main reasons we can deploy equipment so cost effectively. We have flipped the roles in the management model. Traditionally, the management server would normally initiate all communications to the remote device through various mechanisms, usually SNMP. Firewalls are the Achilles heels for network management platforms. They block inbound traffic from the management server and require ports to be opened and mapped to the device, making it difficult to access equipment at the customer premise. The EdgeMark does not participate in this model, and the benefits are substantial when viewing the overall solution. First, the EdgeMark originates the communications to the EdgeView server. It does this with a secure tunnel. All messaging between the EdgeMark and EdgeView remains secure. Second, if the EdgeMark is deployed behind a firewall, no rules are required, as this connection is trusted because it's behind a firewall. Finally, when accessing the EdgeMark via Web GUI via EdgeView, a secure tunnel is created from the EdgeMark. The Web GUI is then accessed via the secure tunnel regardless of the user's location. This ensures all management connectivity is centralized and, more importantly, authorized by the user's established permissions. Let's talk a little bit more about desktop to data center. As previously mentioned, the EdgeMark extends the ability to support the customer all the way down to the desktop handset from the data center. Using the same secure tunnel to manage the EdgeMark, it can be used to access the Web GUI of the handset. This becomes extremely valuable when troubleshooting a problem remotely. For example, a typical troubleshooting scenario may involve accessing a Yealink handset to perform a packet capture. Additional packet captures can also be performed on the LAN and WAN interfaces of the EdgeMark, effectively covering each leg of the customer's network to help isolate the issue. The partner can now confidently support any customer securely once deployed. This removes the barrier of having employees VPN into a jump box or other methods. Ultimately, the management portal provides a secure cloud-based, remotely accessible platform regardless of the user location. A quick view of the EdgeView management platform portal is the key point of the entry for the cloud-to-edge partner. It delivers the key functionality needed to securely manage and deploy EdgeMark products. Upon logging in, the user is able to view a complete summary of each deployed EdgeMark. Status of the last 24 hours is viewable for MOS scores, uptime, traffic levels, peak calls, SIP service status, and more. The management portal is also the basis for provisioning the EdgeMark, whether using zero-touch provisioning or just simple configuration pushes. These can be performed in bulk or on individual devices based on a scheduled outage. Because the configuration file is text-based, it makes the entire configuration process malleable. Templates can be created and shared across EdgeMarks. In addition, individual changes can be pushed on an as-needed basis. Access to all of the level 1 and level 2 troubleshooting and provisioning tools are part of the management portal. As the example, the SIP ladder is most commonly used level 1 support tool. Every call is automatically processed and made viewable through the management platform. Clicking on a call will display all of the associated SIP signaling messages, backing up, in standard ladder format. The details of each message are viewable by clicking on the specific rung of the ladder. Essentially, you can view the call as it moves from the LAN to the WAN side and vice versa without having to perform a packet capture. The SIP header is readily displayed, allowing the user to determine if there are any issues with a header format or signaling. If it is determined that the issue is not related to SIP signaling, then a remote packet capture can be performed as an additional diagnostic to drill down even further on the issue, all of which can be done wherever the console operator is located. As we wrap up our webinar on securing voice communications, this final slide covers additional upside revenue opportunities by adding resiliency beyond the standard DMARC capabilities. The EdgeMark series has many features built in that can be used to further drive these revenue opportunities that other products do not support or require additional licensing. Here are 5 features that are standard with every EdgeMark that can be utilized to increase SLA-based sales to the end customer. High availability, hardware-based solution that utilizes an active standby methodology, easy to deploy, simple to manage. WAN failover. Every EdgeMark has 2 WAN ports that can be used to provide network redundancy. The interfaces can be configured as primary-secondary in a primary-secondary relationship with the ability to fail over and revert back automatically. LTE failover. The EdgeMark 6000 offers an LTE option for markets that do not have a secondary terrestrial-based service provider for redundant access, thus providing limited access markets another dual WAN alternative SLA option. Stateful SIP transfer. This is an active dynamic monitoring of voice quality that automatically removes voice traffic from a degrading link to the secondary link while the call is in progress. Survivability. This is useful for hosted service sites that do not have any other redundant circuit options available. Survivability enables the end customer to remain operational in the local office while analog trunks are a source for PTN access for outbound calling. This is extremely useful in facilities where 911 access is crucial all the time. In closing, we appreciate you taking time out of your day to participate in our Securing Your Voice Cloud Communications webinar. The host of this webinar can be contacted directly if there are any questions. If you'd like to explore more detail any of these topics we've discussed today, please feel free to reach out. I now pass the webinar back over to Jeff Bulger for closing comments.
All right, thank you, Chris. I appreciate that. So, folks, just a couple more items here. One is next steps, points of contact, that sort of thing. Hopefully, you can obviously reach out to your Ribbon sales rep, either on the channel side, if you typically work through channel partners, or if you're typically a direct partner, you can reach out to your Ribbon sales prime. If you don't know who that is, you can reach out to Elizabeth Page. She is the regional market sales director. So she will get in touch with one of her folks and have them reach out to you. So that's option one. Option two, you can reach out to myself or a gentleman named Dave Doherty. Dave and I are the sales engineers that support Elizabeth's team for Ribbon's Cloud and Edge portfolio. And we didn't really talk about the Cloud and Edge portfolio, but the EdgeMark is part of that, as well as the session border controllers in general, soft switches, media gateways, application servers, that sort of thing. So if you have questions about voice services and what can Ribbon offer, feel free to reach out to myself or Dave, and we can help out as well. And then lastly, Chris is very engaged with customers directly and works with customers to help them do evaluations, to do troubleshooting, answering questions about configuration and use cases, and that sort of thing with customers. So feel free to reach out to Chris directly as well if you have questions about EdgeMark or EdgeView or the upcoming transition to RAMP. So those would be good points of contact to keep up with for future questions and future follow-up. And then lastly, I mentioned this up front, and I'm just going to mention it again real quick. We are having another voice-based webinar August 7th at 11 a.m. So we ask that you kind of save the date. And the topics are still being finalized, but we know based on over the last couple weeks, we've had a lot of folks reach out to Ribbon and ask about voice and what the options are for deploying voice in today's environment. I know in the industry, there's been some announcements made, and a lot of folks are kind of wondering, what's next, or what do we do? How long do we have before we have to make a change? So we're going to try to address those types of questions and introduce you to what Ribbon has as part of that webinar on August 7th. In the meantime, however, if you do have those types of questions, feel free to reach out to Ribbon, either your sales prime or Elizabeth or the folks that were on the previous slide, and we can set up a separate session to talk with you about those topics. I've got 2 of them scheduled for Monday as an example, so feel free to reach out if you do have questions and you don't want to wait until August and the webinar. So hopefully we've answered some questions, given you some information that you can think about, and hopefully it was good information. I do ask everybody, if you do have some questions, please do answer. We would love to be able to respond back and answer anything that you're unclear on, or if you need to have a follow-up engagement, feel free to let us know. Just look at the question mark, I think it is on the screen, and you can put in a question, and we'll be glad to answer it. So Lance, I guess I'll hand it back to you.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. So go ahead, Paul. I think we already had one question come through, and I think Paul might be.
We've had a couple of questions come through, and I wanted to make a comment. So Josh had asked about setting up that access to the tunnel access to a phone within their own environment. So Chris, I offered you up to work with Josh to do that. And I'd like to offer the same thing to anyone else who's on the call. If you have an existing environment and you're wondering how to do certain things, or if there are ways that you can do what you're already doing better or differently, please do reach out to us, and we can offer you a technical session to talk through the particular issues or challenges you may be facing. Jeff, I think this is a question that's probably aimed at you, and I'm not sure who all can see the questions when they get asked, because it looks like, whatever. This question was about whether the edge marks can be deployed to support voice services that are offered off of a C15.
Yeah, and the answer to that question is yes. The EdgeMark is agnostic in terms of the platform. So we have C15s deployed in the field we have EdgeMarks deployed off of C15s in the field with several customers that I know of offhand, but we also have them deployed in the field with third-party hosted voice platforms. So certainly we can do everything from a C15, a C20, an application server, and Ribbon's portfolio, and then third-party products as well. We've got examples of those working with third-party companies. So the answer is yes, absolutely.
Yeah, awesome. And there's a question about the phone brand. So we talked about being able to do the remote access and the tunnel into actual management of the handset, but are there any phones that work best or better, or what phones do we support in this scenario?
We want to take that?
Okay, yeah. Go ahead, Chris.
I was going to say, generally, obviously, there's a wide variety out there. I typically run into the Polycom or Polyphones series, and then the Yealing series, probably more than anything else. They seem to be right on the most deployed that I run into. Obviously, you've got a host of other ones that are out there, but those two seem to be the most dominant that I run into on a regular basis.
Okay, great. And then there was a question about who can become a C2E partner and how do you become a C2E partner?
Without a doubt, there's some criteria. There's obviously a level of commitment that needs to be involved there, and some additional training to validate that. That can be validated or passed through to, I guess, the account teams to determine what makes the best path for that customer for at that point in time. So I would highly recommend you would reach out and do the analysis, or we can do the analysis to determine if that makes the most sense for you.
Right, and then you did talk about mention survivability, and there's a question about, does that survivability on the edge mark work the same regardless of where the voice services are coming from?
It does. The primary or the trigger for survivability itself is based on SIP options. So is when that primary SIP proxy goes offline, it immediately recognizes that and then goes into what we call local mode. So it really doesn't matter what the SIP proxy is or where it's located. When it stops responding back, that's the trigger. So it's not difficult to configure. It's just the basic parameters, understanding what each one of those parameters means is what I typically run into, somebody who's enabling that. But the source does not matter. Anything, as long as it's licensed, because it is a licensed feature and a perpetually licensed program, in the cloud to edge, it's included. So the license is already there. So it just depends. But once you're up and running, it's pretty straightforward. And it works very well.
All right, thanks. That's all the questions I have. So Lance, if you'd like to take it away.
Sure. Thanks, Paul and Chris and Jeff, obviously, for presenting the material today. And thank you all for your questions. We had some good ones come in. As usual, when we close here, if something pops in your mind that you forgot to ask or wanted to ask, you can always reach out to us. I have the slide back up with all the key points of contact. So feel free to reach out to any of these individuals with your questions. And I wanted to mention that later this afternoon, you'll be receiving an email with a link to the replay of everything you just saw here today and a link to the slides as well. So you can also reply to that email, with questions too. We'll funnel those to the right people. And as Jeff did mention, that August 7th webinar coming soon, right? We're still orchestrating, exactly what that's going to look like, and we'll get that invite and registration ready for you in the next week or so. And be on the lookout in your inbox for that as well. As always, thanks so much for joining. We certainly appreciate everybody's time, and look forward to talking to you on the next webinar coming shortly. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all.
Thank you.